Hello, everybody, and welcome to the chance to discuss the results of the BEVA BSAVA recruitment and retention survey carried out at the end of last year. We're really lucky to have with us Ebony Escalona from Vetstego Diversify.
Hiya.
Chris Duffnell from the RCVS.
Hi.
Philip Lemette from the BSAVA.
Hi.
And Renata Weller from BEVA.
Hi all.
So, question that we're going to be tackling today is recruitment tougher than it ever was? And particularly having a look at other professions as well, and whether we're making a meal out of it. Ebony, what do you think about the issues of recruitment at the moment?
It's an odd one. I think the survey was interesting because you had a lot of people wanting obviously to fill positions, then a lot of people wanting to stay within the profession, but just move practice. So that kind of marriage there seemed a little bit loose. So I'd be interested in what's happening in that part, really.
Chris, you're a practice owner, and we've just been discussing challenges that you've been facing over the last year in terms of recruitment. What's your take on it?
Well, I definitely think it's got more difficult, and one, I think there are lots of reasons why it's got more difficult. Actually, basically, there are so many more channels now to approach or to try and find people in that. Actually, I think that is one of the factors. When I first started running the practice 15 years ago, almost all people advertised in the vet record, and everybody looking for a job looked in the vet record. And that's been broadened out. So I think it is more challenging to try and create a shortlist because you've got to try and sort of fish in a much wider sea. That said, I used to be able to get sort of 50 applicants and then create a shortlist from that. And now I'm struggling in a 4-week sort of advertising window to get 2 or 3 applicants.
Philip, you're also a practice principal. What's your take?
Well, I can really sort of echo what Chris has said. In the past, I've always had between 50 and 60 applicants, and I think the last time I advertised, I actually got 0, and that was just before Christmas, and I had to re-advertise the position and got 3 or 4. And on the survey, if you look at the survey, the average number of applicants on small animal jobs has been about 4 over the past year or so, which is quite a low figure, but we don't have any comparative results again from previous surveys, so it's quite difficult to say whether it's gone up and down. Certainly the feeling is that it's gone down considerably. And where people are responding to is interesting as well, because over 50% of people are replying through either word of mouth or internet searches, and very, very few through actual adverts. So it's quite difficult when you're putting adverts out there to get a response.
Renata, you've just moved from a university setting to the big corporate world. Do you have your experience in terms of recruitment is probably a bit different from practitioners. What's your view?
Well, so certainly over the last few months at the RVC, we struggled finding specialists. But that's obviously a biased sample at a university level, and that a lot of that I think had to do with the fact that specialists are probably more likely to be recruited internationally, and especially on the radiology sector, which is my background. I mean, there's not that many about anyway, and with the teleradiology services, already waiting for the fresh diploma holders when they come out of the exam, offering relatively good money. That's a hard area to recruit anyway. And Brexit didn't help, to be honest, in that respect. My colleagues in my new employer tell me it's tricky, and it's tricky all across the board. It's tricky for specialists, it's tricky for certificate holders, it's tricky full stop. And they tell me that because, like Philip, I would have quite liked to be able to compare those numbers to 3 or 4 years ago, but we don't have those. But yeah, my new colleagues tell me it's getting, or it got worse over the last few years.
One of the interesting bits of the survey that I thought was that it takes 4 months on average to fill a position. Now, it wasn't clear to me whether that was 4 months to get someone in situ or 4 months to appoint someone, and obviously another period of time for them to serve out their notice. I don't think we know that, do we, Renata?
No, we don't. We didn't tease that out in the data. And also, this is the median. There's huge variation in there. I mean, it goes literally from 1 week to more than, there's some, if you read through the responses, there's some, well, I started advertising 3 years ago and I still haven't filled the position. Now you should think, why haven't you still filled the position? You know, maybe a little bit of reflection would be good there. But equally, there's such a range in terms of that number, how long it takes to fill a position.
It does appear to me that that wouldn't be an unusual, if we were talking about the time it takes to get a new person sat behind a desk, that wouldn't be an unusual period of time if one was looking at many other industries. Ebony, what do you think about that?
Yeah, absolutely. I can speak from one other sector, so having worked in the charity sector, where we have a high volume of applicants to fill positions. But if we could find replacements in 4 months, we would be incredibly happy. So yeah, it's not as simple. There's so many other factors that come into play, from people's availability, their work notice, period. And just like Renata said, there's a lot of feedback to be had if people are not filling those positions. And the definition of insanity is doing the same thing over and over again and expecting a different result. So I think there's something in that as well.
So do you think, Ebony, that there's we perhaps were very lucky in the past and now we're getting a bit of a reality check?
Couldn't agree more. And I think Philip touched on the word of mouth recommendation being such an important thing. And I think we know that across anything from jobs to restaurants to organizations to CPD providers. Word of mouth recommendation is the most trusted form. And I think our job ads certainly need a refresh on that, because we trust what our friends, colleagues and peers value and look at. Another thing I think is interesting within this recruitment space is the rise of the independent professional as well. I know that this survey didn't really touch on the locum side much, but actually that locum is an incredible good word of mouth, or a bad word of mouth. And also a lot of those locums are looking around and shopping to find their next forever home. So, I think that's not a bad thing. You've got to kind of think, what do people say when you're not in the room? What do people say about the people that work there, at the organisation, when you're not in the room?
Chris, what do you think about Ebony's point there, that we're perhaps stuck in we're perhaps harking back to the good old days where we had thousands of applicants and only one job to give them?
I think that's potentially fair comment, and I don't think there's any harm in there being some competition, because it certainly makes us all think about the conditions that people are working under, the hours, and what we're doing for them in terms of building teams. And I think there's been a tendency in certain areas of the profession to assume that the way I did it was the way that everybody should do it, and they should just lump it. So I think that's good for people to be made to think a little bit about what they're doing with people.
And Philip, do you have a view on why applications for posts are seemingly so low compared to how they used to be?
I think there's probably several reasons. Brexit obviously may be one reason, and certainly when I advertised it was just after the vote and they seemed to dry up from Europe. But also I think practices have changed. In general practice 20, 30 years ago, everybody was a generalist. Most people were in mixed practices and most vets did pretty much the same thing. And nowadays, because people are becoming more specialist, practices might be looking just for a medic or just for somebody with a particular interest in ophthalmology or whatever it might be. So you're looking in a smaller pool of people, and they're looking for more specialist people as well. And a lot of people now, as Ebony was saying, there's a lot more people are locuming, and there are some people who've just become permanent locums or peripatetic surgeons or whatever. So there's a different and broader remit of jobs out there.
Renata, do you think there's a simple solution, or do you think we're this is just where we are and we have to adapt to it?
I'm with Chris. I think this is actually an opportunity that, I mean, this is a, what do you call this? A buyer's market now. If you are going out and looking for a job, you know, that's a, well, whatever. But I think this is the opportunity for the veterinary workforce to actually almost demand better working conditions. And, you know, in terms of working hours, in terms of salaries. So I see it as a good thing for now.
Great. Anyone like to add a further point on the challenges of recruitment?
I'll just say, you know, it's not always a good thing to have 50 applicants to sift through. You actually need a handful to make that decision. And if your advert or your proposition or your sell is specific and authentic and showing the values that you and your team bring and what you specifically need and what that person can do and grow into, and not just be, you know, a standard thing saying, you know, cake provided on a Friday. If you sell it specifically, so that advert or that position is speaking to those people, the right people will come on board. You don't need 50, you need a couple.
So that's very true, Philip. It's better to have one really good applicant than have 50 bad ones. But the applicants
need somebody who's going to fit with the team as well. So it's partly their particular skills and their particular attributes professionally, but also somebody who's going to fit in with the practice team. Because it's a two-way thing, and they have to enjoy working with you, and you have to enjoy working with them. So it's finding somebody, and it's nice to have at least 3 or 4 that you can select from, and who can spend a day in your practice and see if it fits them well as well.
Thank you. Anyone else like to raise a point?
Yeah.
Chris.
Yeah, I mean, I think I used the 50 applications bit as an indication of the sort of level of demand potentially dropping. But I agree with Ebony. It's like looking for a house. You only need the one right one. And so I would love to be able to get the right people. But my experience is that if the 2 applicants were guaranteed to effectively fit with my team and give me the choice of one or other of them, that would be great. I do find it a challenge to get into an advert or a post on social media or whatever the essence of the practice. And also, I think anybody who experiences a really great practice would struggle potentially, unless they're trained, to put it into exact words why it feels like a great practice. And so they're actually, it's getting people through the door to come and experience it, which is that first challenge, and that is really difficult, and it's become more difficult because of the increased number of channels that you've got to get out there. And I'm to stick my neck out, and this is speaking personally as an employer rather than as a representative of the RCVS. I'm not absolutely convinced yet that the recruitment agents have added anything to the picture that we weren't coping with before. So I'm very happy to be put directly in contact with applicants and to try and converse with them and aim for what I always tell them I'm aiming for, which is a win-win, where they suit us, we suit them, and hopefully it builds on a good relationship.
Thank you. Anyone else? Renata.
Well, I'm just wondering, since we have 2 employers here, is Ebony said, well, you know, when you go to a restaurant, you do it on personal recommendation. I actually look a lot on TripAdvisor as well. Or if I book a hotel, I go on booking.com and so on. So should we have something like this for veterinary employers?
Ebony.
So there is something out there called Glassdoor, which is an anonymous rating and posting of employers, and some veterinary teams feature on there. But I think you've got to take all those TripAdvisors, etc., with a pinch of salt, because not everyone is going to remember to say something good, but it's very easy to say something bad online anyway. So it's something to be taken a bit of. But there are some other recruiters and other organisations are creating rating systems. So that will be interesting to see. And the one thing that Vetsteg and BSAVA have started doing is actually interviewing the boss. that we're actually having video interviews just like this, so that people can hopefully see the essence, see that human behind the vet, and see actually, do I like the sound of this person? Do I like the person, you know, looking back at me? So hopefully that will help connect the right people to the right practices.
Absolutely, thank you. And I think Glassdoor has certainly been used. I'm aware of some cases where it's been pretty messy and it's been a pretty nasty service, but it is out there. You're absolutely right. And I've been struck personally by recently seeing social media posts from people who are leaving jobs saying how fantastic the role is and encouraging people to apply, which I think is a really good good advert.
And one other quick thing, David, I've noticed on some of the forums, instead of the employer posting, there's been individuals saying, "Hi, I'm a 12-year qualified small animal and equine, you know, graduate. I've been looking for XYZ. I know I can offer this." And they really nail down what it is they can bring to a team. And what you hope from the back of those posts, I mean, they've been completely inundated with people, but hopefully the right employers are going, that's exactly the cog we're missing in our wheel. So that's another way of doing it. Is it's not always on the side of the employer.
Absolutely. Anyone like to, Philip?
I was just going to say that there's no real way around actually going into a practice and spending a day there, and perhaps spending some time with the person who's leaving in private, because that gives you a much better idea of what the job's actually like and why they're leaving and so on. And it is something that needs to fit you as a new employee as much as it needs to fit me as an employer, because we want everybody to be happy. Otherwise, they're going to leave in 6 months' time, and that's going to put us back on the treadmill. So ideally, you want to spend time in the practice, and particularly with new graduates, it's very important you get a good feel of what the practice is like.
Great, thank you all. So just to whiz round, question for you, yes or no, do you think recruitment's tougher than it ever was? Renata?
In my specialist field, yes.
Philip?
Yes, certainly from my point of view as an employer, it's certainly become more difficult in the last few years.
Ebony?
I think the opportunities are endless. We've just got to get a bit more innovative.
Chris?
Yes.
That was the one word, wasn't it? Thank you very much. Thank you all very much.